Okay, so this is Pathwork number 2, Decisions and Tests. And this writing came through somebody who did quieten their mind and they learned to listen. And so this is a flow of intelligence that came through that process. So I'll, rather than deprive it of its beginning, I'll read it as it is, verbatim. So, greetings in the name of God. I bring you God's blessings. My dear friends, God's love penetrates the entire creation. It is a living force, a beam that meets itself in an eternal round, as everything spiritual must move in circular completeness. Now, I thought I'd just actually say about that first, or that second sentence there, of that paragraph, that in the past, people have talked about God and how they conceptualise God as in some sort of a physical being somewhere in the universe. Now, for me, when it's talking about a living force or a beam, this brings to my mind that, as we've said before, when you look at fundamental forces of the universe, these forces are not visible forces. They're not tangible things. You understand? So if you get gravity, say, between planets or suns, any material objects in space, there is a force at work that isn't a tangible thing. If you have one of the forces of magnetic forces, if you have a piece of metal, if you arrived on the planet and you saw a piece of metal, you wouldn't see anything that would indicate to you that there was a force at work until you actually brought it, a magnet to another piece of metal, or you put iron filings around it, which then show to you that there is an unseen pattern going on there. So when we're talking about God, I'm saying that for me, really you're talking about an unseen patterning force. So this is what we mean by this force, or a beam. And so rather I rather prefer to God in terms of something like creative, loving, intelligent process of life, rather than the specific manifestation of physical tangibility of life. You understand? Right.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
It says, as everything spiritual must move in circular completeness. Why has it got to do that? An eternal round? Why does it have to do
because
that?
Because in terms of the fact that the universe is better seen as invisible forces at work, manifesting in your experience a physicality. That physicality really isn't there in a bounded, limited way. So if you try and think of, say, the end of something, the end of the universe, say, you get a hard time trying to conceptualise that, because you think more in terms of bounded, ending and finishing. You understand? So the physical world usually has some sense of well-defined boundaries in which something stops, or begins, or ends. You understand? But in terms of mindedness, which is what we're talking about here in terms of a non-physical being, in that non-physical being there's no beginning and end. And so it's all, in a sense, best to represent that in terms of circular or spherical, in which you start in one point and you actually come round to the beginning again, rather than come to an end. So all the forces of mind, in a sense, are an integrated wholeness, moving in circular completeness within itself. So it's trying to use language as best as possible to help your mind energies to entertain the idea that we're not really talking about concreteness here. We're talking about energies that flow. You understand? So if you have a muddy pool and you stir up the mud, in a sense, you get these energies, represented by the mud, swirling energies. Yeah. So this energy, in a sense, is a swirling energies that manifest to you a very organised reality. So to some extent you know what you're dealing with here in terms of the sophistication, the complexity of this energy force. Okay? So all creatures are in search of this powerful beam of love, this energy force, whether consciously or unconsciously. The longing to feel this love drives, pulls, spurs humans and spirits. They will have an understanding of the yearning according to their state of development, will draw conclusions, and follow through with their will and their thoughts. Or they will not interpret these feelings correctly and will allow this driving force to act through them and even lead them into mistakes. Not realizing the real nature of the feelings and the search, the person will look for false goals, or we might say false gods, or idols.
Have some water.
No, it's okay, thank you. And false fulfillment. However, those who reach the stage of development where they already understand what these hitherto inexplicable feelings of longing really are, have taken a great step. They will also know in what direction to go. Thus there will be fewer errors and misunderstanding about one's own soul forces, and their messages will be translated correctly. So what we're saying here is in this movement and flow of life. I beg your pardon. In this flow of life, it isn't just an accident. What we're saying here is fundamentally that there is a common conception in a sense that, there is consequence to living in the physical world, where if you can control the physical world, then you can prevent yourself from experiencing things of accident. So the more you know, the more you can avoid accident. You understand? But what we're saying here really is that nothing in this flow, in the eternal round of energies, is accidental. There are consequences, very real consequences to the way people behave, is what we're saying. And the way that people behave is determined by the way that mind relates to the physical world, as we'll see. So this is what we really need to have under observation. Your relationship to that which you experience. And this is, as you'll see, is a quest for truth. Because if you aren't seeing clearly and correctly, then that's going to block you from experiencing your fulfillment. So, the love for God, the longing for God, is the driving force in every human being. Even those who have not yet found God, or who believe that they do not believe in God, harbour these strong currents in their soul. Those who experience a complete turnabout in their spiritual development and recognise God in consciousness enter into a new way of life. So first of all, you see, you have to realise that if you're looking for you, the first truth of you is that you do have consciousness. That is not a small thing. When you recognise that the first primary axiomatic truth of mind is I experience, then you also know that you are able to reflect and see your experiencing. So you are not only conscious, but you are a consciousness that is capable of self-reflection, self-experiencing, self-awareness. Okay? So when you enter into that realm of awareness, of consciousness, you're into a whole new ballpark of self-association. Yeah?
Yeah. Except that is my difficulty all the time, and I don't feel that. I hear other people saying, if only I could find God, a friend